Hey everybody, I decided to make a new guitar, and I decided to do this because I got a gift certificate for Lowe's for about 50 bucks, and I wanted to see what Lowe's had to offer that I haven't used before that I could make a guitar body out of. So price of wood has gotten pretty expensive, so as I was shopping around I was taking that in consideration. What can I get to maximize 50 bucks that'll make a guitar body? And so I looked around, couldn't really find anything that great, and then I stumbled upon some shelving and I found teak wood in there. And I've never used teak to build a guitar before, but it looked pretty nice, it looked pretty cool, so I decided to go ahead and buy that, and it just happened to be the exact price that I had. And so I took it home, unpackaged it, and discovered this wood's really pretty. I really like it a whole lot. So I'm gonna make this into a Telecaster body style, and my original intention was to use the Telecaster body but leave it the thickness of the shelving, which is only 1 inch. And so it sounded like a great idea, and so I put a template on there and started cutting out all the cavities and routing what I needed to, and I accumulated basically all the measurements to equal 1 inch. And so some of the depths of some of the pockets had to be adjusted and changed up a little bit just to see if it would actually work. And after I routed everything out, everything had the depth that it needed to be, and the only problem with it was going to be the neck setting. So the neck will actually fit into the setting and it will be okay, but the way I was looking at it was the neck was going to sit just a little bit too proud of the top, and the only way to really fix that would be to have a bridge adjustment, and it would just be too high above the body and it just wouldn't quite work out and it wouldn't be fun to play. So I decided against that, but I went ahead and pushed forward anyway, and my ultimate goal was to cut out a top piece and then cut out a bottom piece because I had enough wood to do both, and then just marry those two together. So I decided to keep going with the top piece and routing out all the cutouts and started doing the round over on the edge. And this is where I had wished that I married the two pieces together because I had a huge router tear out, which is okay. I've had router tear outs before, and it's a pretty simple fix, but like I said, if I had routed or married the two pieces together before routing, it might not have had the tear out. It would have been a little bit more reinforced, but again, I've had it before and it's not a huge deal to fix. So I ended up just cutting out the piece that got ripped out and taking some of that rougher cut away, some of that rougher grain away. And then with some of the pieces that I had cut off before, just try to find a grain that matched similarly and try to marry those two back up again. And so all I really had to do was find the scrap wood and find a flat edge, cut out the new edge, and then once that was cut out, all I had to do was just make sure it was going to line up, make sure it was going to look nice and pretty against the body. And after that was done, all I had to do was just wait to start marrying things up. So again, since I already had the top done, I just started cutting holes and putting holes where they needed to go to. I knew that I was going to have to start cutting things a little bit deeper, start making pockets a little bit deeper at some point, but I didn't want to do that until I had the bottom married up. And so I went ahead and just took advantage and started putting holes in it already to route all the wiring and make sure everything was good to go. So after I cut the bottom piece, the same way I cut the top on the template, decided to go ahead and marry those up. And once I did, I ended up sticking those together, started gluing up everything and making sure it was all good to go, making sure that the bond was going to be tight. And it was at this point also that I took advantage of fixing the router tear out pieces as well. And so that was a pretty simple fix. All you had to do was glue up the soft edge and put the new cutout piece up against the edge, glue it all in place, and then once that was done, I just let it sit for a long time, made sure it was all good to go the next day, and it was perfect. The only problem is now it's 2 inches thick because the boards were 1 inch thick each, and so that's just going to be a little bit too much. The problem is I don't have a planer. I wish I did, but I just don't. So I need to take about 1/4 inch off of there. And like I said, without a planer, the only way that I could really do this was to measure out 1/4 inch on my table saw and then make multiple passes with the bottom. And this is why I was glad that I didn't cut all the cavities as far as they were supposed to be cut, because this allowed me to cut the 1/4 inch off the back this way and then chisel out all the slabs and the pieces in between. And basically I just broke them off and pulled them off one by one, and this took the 1/4 inch off the bottom of the guitar that I needed. So it's not the ideal way to do it. A planer probably would have been a much better way to do that, just to take some off of the top of it a little bit at a time, but yeah, I made do with what I had. I'm not going to go buy a planer just so I can make one guitar body look nice. So after that, I just took my my hand plane and just went over all the rough edges and continued to do that until I got it nice and smooth. There was a little bit of chunkiness in some of the tear outs that I wasn't able to plane all the way down, but I did my best just to make sure everything was smooth and playable, and as long as it didn't have any unsightly gouges in it, I was okay with that. So after marrying the top and the bottom, I went ahead and just routed out everything so that way it had level sides and everything was equal. And at this point, I could start routing the cavities as deep as the recommendations are for a Telecaster. And so I had a couple of different pieces. This is all mostly parts that I'm using to put this thing together. And I had a couple of pieces left over. Some of the toggle switches that I had for the pickup selector were blade switches, and then some of them were import switches. And so I was trying to decide what I wanted to use for this, and I think I kind of got it set out to what I wanted. But since I married the two bodies together, I was able to route every cavity a little bit deeper. Now the neck sits in at the exact height that it should be sitting in for a Telecaster build. So I routed out everything else, rounded over all the edges, being very careful this time to make sure that I did not have any route or tear out. And everything turned out pretty good. I was very happy with it. You can kind of see a little bit of gouge from some of this, but that's all standard whenever I start using router, and a little bit of tear out here and there is kind of okay. And so that set me up for my least favorite part of any build, and that is the hours and hours of going back, sanding minute details, sanding minute detail, and then sanding and some more. And yeah, like I said, not my favorite part. Sometimes it's fun to do, but other times when you just want to get a build over with and see what the final product looks like, sanding can be a long, arduous process. But I finally got it done, got it to where I wanted to, and then I was able to start drilling out some of the other things that I couldn't whenever I had just the two bodies unmarried. So I had this neck around for a long time that I've been waiting to use for some kind of build, and I decided this was going to be the right one. And I also had this 500 won piece that I got from whenever I visited South Korea. So I kept that, and I thought it would be cool to put that inside of the headstock just to make it a little bit unique. And so I ended up doing that, cutting out all the holes for the neck and the neck pocket. Went pretty well. Everything seemed to be nice and easy. Like I said, this teak wood, easy wood to work with. I would definitely try to build something out of it again. So after that, it was just a matter of getting everything set up, getting everything in place, marking out all the holes for the bridge and the pick guard. And I wanted to just make sure that everything was as pre-drilled, pre-ready to go as possible. So there was a lot of dry fitting, a lot of moving around a little bit, a lot of trying to get everything just in place where I wanted it. And it all came out pretty good. So I decided with this one, instead of like a traditional Telecaster, I wanted to have a armrest on it, and then I also wanted to put a belly carve on it too. So my lovely wife always helps me out with these projects, and she noticed it was a little warm outside that day, so we had some refreshments while she worked on a project in the background and while I worked on mine. But my ultimate goal was to make sure that I put this body in a comfortable state to play. And I've always loved Stratocasters. Stratocaster is probably my first guitar love. And I always like to mirror some of those qualities whenever I build new guitars. And for the Telecaster, I decided to go ahead and put an arm bevel in it and put a belly carve in it as well. And it's turned out pretty good. So I'm a big fan of using hand tools whenever possible. And so I had these big wood rasps that I had gotten a long time ago and never had the opportunity to really use them on something super awesome. So I decided to use it on this guitar. And like I said, it turned out really good. So I wanted the wood to really shine, the grain to really pop through on this one. So instead of just clear coating, I decided to use True Oil. And I've used True Oil before on other guitars, and I really like the way it turns out. And it's very, very forgiving, but at the same time, you can really set the level that you want. If you want a super high gloss, you can put many, many coats on there and achieve it. If you want just kind of like a matte shine to it, you can put maybe 1 or 2 coats on there and achieve that as well. This one, I really wanted it to shine. I used the True Oil gunstock finish, and this one, I think I probably put about, 7 to 10 coats on it, somewhere in there. I would just leave it sitting up in my little workshop just as it is, and I would walk by, and if it was dry and it didn't quite look as shiny as I wanted or really emitted a vibrance to it, then I'd put another layer on there. So somewhere between about 7 and 10 coats are on this guitar body. Like I said, it turned out pretty good. I'm happy with the progress that I had made with it at this point. And so I decided, well, okay, I think I got it to where I want it now. And so after that, I sanded it down. I think I started with about 600 grit, and just kept going down in grit till it hit about right about 2,000, and then after that polished as much as possible. And with this one, because the grains were kind of open, I didn't use any grain sealer on it, just because I didn't want to mess up the true nature of the grain on it. And I think it turned out pretty good. A little bit of divots here and there, but overall pretty appealing. The neck that I had didn't quite match the body, and I just wanted it to look a little bit more rustic, and it still looked way too new. Yeah, the wood was just a little bit too bright, so I wanted to dull it down just a little bit and make it look a little bit more weathered than it actually is. And so I had some leftover wood stain, and I put that on there just to kind of drag it a little bit and make it look a little more barn wood almost. But after I achieved that, I decided to go ahead and start assembling all the pieces that I got. And like I said, this is a build from parts that I had laying around. So I had to make sure that I actually had all the parts to satisfy the build. And so I ended up using a bunch of Stratocaster parts that I had left over, some other Tele parts, and pretty well anything that I had that would work for this build is what I used. And I ended up having everything that I need, so I didn't have to order anything. So I achieved my goal of just using all the parts that I previously had. Again, I just used a fixed bridge. I didn't want to do a string through for the body, so it's just a top load Telecaster bridge. And after that, decided I'd go with the import switch. The import switch was just a little bit shallower than the actual blade switch for the pickups, and so I decided I'd use that just because it gave me a little bit more room for the wiring inside of the guitar cavity. After that, I started putting some of the tuners on. I realized that a little bit of the hole was, or some of the holes were just a little bit too small, and so I had to ream some of those out a little bit more. But after I got those cleaned up and filled out pretty quickly, it was easy to install all the tuners in it. And really the last thing to do was install the strings on it, and all I needed to do after I got the strings installed on it was actually plug it in and give it a little bit of a test and see if it actually works. This is always my hesitancy, is I'm afraid I'm going to plug it in and it's just going to blow up, but this one actually turned out pretty good. Overall, a really fun build. I think I would definitely do it again. I really like the teak wood. Very nice, very easy to work with, and it turned out really good. I look forward to playing this guitar. It's more of a showpiece for me, but I think I really liked it. Like I said, I'd like to build another one out of teak somewhere in the near future, but that'll be a build for another day and another time. But thanks for watching. I really appreciate anybody who tuned into this. So if you have any questions, let me know.